Welcome back into the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jed and Sap. We are presented by Full Press Coverage. I am Jet Stryer. That is John Sapichetti. You can't see it, but I am pointing at my computer screen. How is it going today, Sap?
Going pretty well. Some really good topics we can discuss. The All-Star game coming later in the week. So, good time to catch up on some of these things in the NBA.
Yeah, it should be a busy week for us. We're going to do a bunch of shows as we continue to expand towards what seems like inevitably 7 days a week of doing this show. We started with 1, now we're at 2. It seems like we're going to be at 3 this week, and I'm telling you, it's going to climb up to 7 at some point. But that's fine because the NBA gives us plenty of news. I got to tell you, Sap, the 2 topics that we're discussing today, I was chomping at the bit to talk about these 2 things. I wanted to do the podcast right when they came out, but we had already done one, and then it was the weekend. But I'm really, really looking forward to, because I have a lot of opinions on both of these things. So we're gonna just jump right into it. And the first is a rivalry that I didn't think was going to happen this year. But strange things happen when you're in a pandemic and it's a quarantine and all sorts of things. And that's the rivalry between LeBron James of the Los Angeles Lakers and Zlatan Ibrahimović of AC Milan. They don't play the same sport. And yet, here they are going back and forth with statements they're making in their press conferences, statements they're making in interviews. And at some point, we might see them both in a boxing ring if this keeps up, Sap. So just to quickly paraphrase, and then I'll read to you exactly what happened. Ibrahimović was doing an interview. I think it was a wide-ranging interview. And he basically called out LeBron James for not shutting up and dribbling, for talking about politics. Here is exactly what Ibrahimović said in an interview to the Los Angeles Times. He said, quote, "He is phenomenal at what he's doing," in reference to LeBron James. "But I don't like when people have some kind of status, they go and do politics at the same time. Do what you're good at. Do the category you do. I play football, soccer, because I'm the best at playing football, soccer. I don't do politics. If I would be a political politician, I would do politics." Now, I don't know what a political politician is, Sap, but before I get into what LeBron said in response, what were because it was about a 24-hour period of time before LeBron had a chance to respond to this. What were your initial thoughts when Ibrahimović gave this interview to the LA Times?
Well, I look at Ibrahimović. I was absolutely, upset, very mad, apoplectic, use any word to describe my feelings of that.
Were you immediately going on your burner Twitter account, writing very mean things about it?
Yes, I burned my AC Milan shirt. And LeBron actually has a small stake in Liverpool, so maybe there's a rivalry there. But I like athletes that speak out. And that's one of the reasons I love LeBron James. He's my favorite basketball player of all time, not just because I think he's the greatest player of all time, but because of what he does off the court. So when someone pushes back on that, my antenna goes up and says, okay, there's going to be a tone of racism in this, right? Because here's the thing.
Ibrahimović is white? Is that what you're
Ibrahimović is white. He's had some issues.
In case you weren't sure. But
Ibrahimović, who, by the way, that's the name of a former eye doctor I had, Dr. Ibrahimović. We just called her Dr. I. No, we just called her Dr. I. Now, Ibrahimović is Bosnian, but a Bosnian extraction, but he is Swedish. He's had pushback because he has a Bosnian last name in Sweden. People think there's racism, xenophobia taking place in the United States. Give Europe a shot. They've trumped us in terms of horrible relationship among all of their countries. So he's faced this in his own country, and now, he's kind of throwing that shade out there against LeBron James. The reason that I support LeBron is that, first of all, money talks, bullshit walks. And LeBron James, because he makes about $100 million a year, pays roughly $40 million a year in taxes, federal, state, local taxes.
We're sure that he's paying his taxes.
Yes, we do know he's paying his taxes, okay? It's not like Donald Trump, who claims to be a billionaire and paid $750. That's just 750 in federal income taxes a few years ago. LeBron's contract alone with the Lakers is about $40 million a year. the state income tax in California is 14%. So do the math right there. That's almost $6 million.
I think isn't that the highest in the country?
It's the highest.
Certainly one of the highest.
14%. So that in New York, I think, are the two highest. So he's paying about $6 million a year just in state income tax, let alone federal income tax, property tax. And oh, by the way, he also owns a media company, Spring Hill Entertainment, that employs 100 people. So he's putting people to work. He's also pledged over $100 million over the next 10 years to fund 2,300 scholarships to the University of Akron at $45,000 per scholarship. That's over $100 million that he's pledged over the next 10 years. And also, he's funded the I Promise School in Akron, Ohio, his hometown, to the tune of several $1 million. He puts a lot of money out there. And you know what? It seems to be okay in this country if you're a rich old white guy that you buy political protection, political influence. But when a young black athlete does the same, there seems to be a pushback. I wonder what that is and why that is. So, any guesses?
I honestly, Sap, it's eluding me. I really can't figure that one out.
Let's think. I don't know. It's let's play with that a little bit. Shut up and dribble.
It's weird, and it does seem odd that why were there people complaining about those people what was similar to the people who were taking a knee in the NFL?
Yeah, that's true too. Right? Yeah, I remember them, Kaepernick and Reed, and some of those guys too. Yeah, one of them can't get back in the league. Interesting.
But so let's get into exactly what LeBron says, and this isn't the whole statement. He went on for a couple minutes talking about it because obviously he was not particularly pleased with Mr. Ibrahimović. No relation to your eye doctor. No. LeBron said this in his post-game press conference: "I preach about my people, and I preach about equality, social injustice, racism, systematic voter suppression, things that go on in our country, because I was part of my community at one point and saw the things that was going on. And I know what's going on still because I have a group of 300 plus kids at my school that are going through the same thing and they need a voice, and I'm their voice." He went on to say that he's not the right person to go at because he does his research and he does his homework and he knows what he's talking about. For the most part, I'd say that's true. I'd say some things not necessarily true with LeBron James doing his research on that, the China controversy primary amongst them. But for the most part, yes, he grew up in the neighborhood that he now funds kids in, so he does know what's going on there. That makes sense. I mean, listen, he's been in the NBA nearly 20 years now, so he's been a rich guy for a while. So I think that's why he said, I was part of my community at one point. I mean, I think at least he's self-aware to know he's not still, a poor black guy. He's a very, very rich black guy who is internationally known and can't really walk anywhere on the face of the earth without being recognized. So it's a little bit different from when he grew up. So, Sap, did you think that LeBron was being overly defensive here? Did he strike the right tone in your mind? Or is this something that you thought he should have handled it a different way? Or did he do it exactly how you're hoping he would?
No, he handled it the way I would like to see him handle it. I mean, he wasn't pounding on the table and, showing too much emotion. I think he was kind of matter of fact talking about, look, I follow stuff. And he knew about Ibrahimovic's problems with, xenophobia, racism, whatever the
We'll get into that in a second.
He knew about that already. And so he's saying, well, he's gone through this himself in Sweden with a Bosnian last name. So he kind of knew enough about Ibrahimović, who's one of the best soccer players in the world. I mean, he's, I believe, about the same age as LeBron.
Has been for over a decade.
Yeah, he's in his late 30s as well. So it's not like he's just a young guy. And by the way, Ibrahimović has had, I can't even say his name anymore, and I'm usually pretty good at these names. Soccer player we'll call him that, is someone who's had a ton of issues with his own teammates, opponents, kicking episodes,
well, you're supposed to do that, eyeballs. Kicking is fine.
I guess so. That's kicking is fine. And, although he doesn't seem like they're faking it as much as most soccer players. So, I think LeBron set the right tone. I wasn't nuts that he was shirtless at the press conference. I'm not sure where he was getting at there, other than he wanted to show off his tattoos because Ibrahimović has a lot of tattoos as well. So maybe he was trying to up him on that. But I think he struck the right tone. I also think that LeBron at times needs some surrogates to speak on his behalf, whether it's another player in the league, and that would probably be the best thing. But who has more credibility than LeBron when it comes to these things? I don't think really anyone. Like there's no one else in the league. I mean, Jalen
pressed.
Rose, who's a former player, would be someone who could speak on LeBron's behalf.
Magic
right?
Johnson's done a lot.
Magic, I'd be honest with you, LeBron to me is a much more articulate guy than Magic.
I'm just saying in terms of stuff that he's done. Like, look at all the jobs Magic Johnson's created in Los Angeles.
Yeah. Okay, I got you there.
Especially in poor communities. That's what I'm saying.
Kareem would be great, but Kareem's now in his almost mid-70s.
Yeah, Bill Russell.
So Bill Russell is in his late 80s. So, I mean, those guys would be great. But Bill Russell's active on Twitter. I would have liked to see maybe Russell will at some point, put out a little message of, this is what makes LeBron James so special. He's not going to shut up. I mean, it's hard to match dribble.
Because, obviously LeBron's
There's no one as
very
big as
charitable,
LeBron.
But he's the biggest sports star in the world and has been for nearly 20 years now.
I mean, Michael Jordan could come out, but Michael Jordan has become very Garbo-esque. We never hear from him, right? I mean, and he pledged $100 million to fight racial injustices,
and then he's since pledged more. He's giving away a lot of money.
Plenty of money, right? I mean, he's worth $4 billion.
Yeah, he dwarfs what LeBron has. Michael Jordan dwarfs that
3 or 4 times.
Money,
and LeBron may catch up at some point, but it doesn't hurt Jordan that he gets $165 million a year just from Nike, just for the year Jordan brand. That's just like, here's a check once a year for $165 million, not to mention everything else that he touches and the fact that he owns an NBA team. So it'd be nice if he had someone, whether it be a current player, maybe Kyrie Irving, but do you necessarily want Kyrie Irving being your spokesperson? Because he has a way of putting foot in mouth. So
I'm still not even sure they like each other for what that's worth.
They don't. Draymond Green might be a good guy, but Draymond tends to get emotional.
But again, Seth, it doesn't matter because nobody's bigger than him.
The only one who could speak up that's on his footing is Michael Jordan, and Jordan just doesn't do it. So, and again, I don't think there's any love lost between Jordan and LeBron. More so,
probably
on Jordan's part. So I don't think he's going to come to the aid of LeBron James. So, but LeBron can handle this. He's got literally big shoulders. He's not afraid to take these types of issues on. I think he handled it well. I really do.
Do you think it pissed him off? Like, actually pissed him off, or do you think he shrugs it off?
I don't think he shrugged it off, but he's not an emotional guy like that, right? You don't see him get angry too much. He keeps a lot inside, and I think he has the right temperament through all of this. There's times on the court I wish he'd get more pissed off, because we've seen him when he gets pissed off on the court. That's when he takes it to another level. I think once Draymond Green kicked him in the nuts in the 2016 NBA Finals, from that point forward, he never played better. I'm like, sometimes you got to, wake the big guy up. Wilt Chamberlain used to do the same thing. If Wilt got really pissed off, it was just like, hide the women and children, because, Wilt's going to score 100 points on you.
And then LeBron's have sex with all the women.
And then have sex with all the women. And and maybe adopt all the children. So those are the two athletes that I've seen that literally they're just bigger, stronger, faster, better than everybody. And sometimes it almost feels like they don't want to hurt someone. So if they're pissed off, they're even more productive. So LeBron really has a pretty good temperament, even with the media. I mean, I think he handles himself really well with the media.
This is obviously bigger than an on-court issue of some guy is, fouling you and stuff like that. So I'm saying, in terms of his temperament, you're the biggest LeBron James fan I know. What you do, take what you know about him.
Yep.
Put yourself in LeBron's shoes when he first read or heard about this Ibrahimović thing. What do you think his exact feelings were? Do you think he was mad, or do you think it's just like he's tired of this sort of stuff happening?
He's probably tired of it too. Yeah, because it's been a while now, right? Because Laura Ingraham, shut up and dribble.
I mean, odds are he's never even met this guy.
He's never met him. So I don't think it's not coming from Kyrie Irving, who said that's the best free throw shooter you have on the team, which is kind of funny but disrespectful to LeBron James. And LeBron was taking the technical foul. I mean, I give Kyrie
or Brandon Ingram saying that Zion Williamson's the best player he's ever played with.
Right. Or Kyrie saying, I finally got someone at the end of the bench as talented as me and Kevin Durant. You only played with LeBron for 3 years. I mean, there's a lot of pushback against LeBron James. In fact, I watch
that stuff.
NBA
I wouldn't care about, though. I mean, he's what else does he get to accomplish? So why would he care about the on the court stuff? Why would he care about it? I'm saying,
and even off the court,
Kyrie's going to rip his free throw shooting. What Kyrie? All these players that are ripping on him, he's better than, and they're never going to be as good as he is.
No, he's in another league.
Why would
that? Them, yeah.
If I'm him, why would that bother me? That's silly. This sort of stuff.
I don't think that does,
because I think LeBron positions himself as like not a modern day Dr. King, because that's being hyperbolic. No. As a leader of the social injustice movement, one of the faces of it right now. I think that's how he views himself. So if
Who
somebody's
else is there besides him in terms of pro athletes? I can't even think of anyone now.
Colin Kaepernick.
Kaepernick, but he's silent, and he's never been as big a star. I mean, LeBron's much more verbal than Colin Kaepernick.
Who are the faces of this recent social
guys,
injustice
and
movement?
a lot of the WNBA players, Maya Moore, quit her sport to fight racial, social.
So I think that's how he looks at himself. He knows what he knows what he is as a basketball player. I don't think he's ever doubted that. I think he's always had some insecurities about some of the other things off the court. Whether it be, that he had, I think that all these players who come out of high school and, don't get a college degree, people look at them and say, well, they're not really that educated, whether that's fair or not. And I think that he's made little cracks about it in the past about, I only have graduated high school. I'm sure he's probably a little insecure about people thinking he's not as smart as he is. Cause I don't think he's dumb. I don't think he's necessarily the smartest person, going in the NBA. No. That might be Jaylen Brown. But I think there's probably some insecurities about this off the court stuff. His leadership, in terms of what he's doing in his community, his intelligence, his business acumen, that sort of stuff. So I could see this hitting a nerve with him.
Sure. Yeah, because it's now you're going after LeBron James, the man, not the basketball player.
That's exactly what I'm getting at. Perfect.
That's much tougher to deal with. The basketball player, look, I mean...
Well, what are you going to say? That's what about him as a basketball player.
If his ultimate goal is to be the greatest player of all time, there's maybe 5% of us that really follow this that would say he's the greatest player of all time. 95% would say it's Michael Jordan. And I don't think he's really going to ever close the gap. He can get the 6 titles, and there's going to be Skip Bayless and the rest of them who will never give him the credit. They'll talk about his 6 losses in the finals more than his potential 6 wins, even though that's ludicrous. So, yeah, as a basketball player, it's at worst, I think he's the second greatest player of all time, right? I think we can agree on that. At the very worst, he's on Mount Rushmore with Jordan, Kareem, and Bill Russell, in my opinion. So that part of it, yeah, I mean, he's in his 18th year, and he's still the best player in the league. But, yeah, the other stuff is more about LeBron, the man, and that hurts more. That hurts more, especially with the racial overtones.
Well, I think that's something that he's been, especially as he's gone on in his career and accomplished so many things, that I think is something that makes sense to me that he would be more sensitive about, because it's less tangible, right? To prove who you are as a man and what you're doing for your community, because the results aren't super clear yet. I mean, he just started the school, a couple years ago? So it's not like, he's got this flurry of college graduates who are changing the world. It's going to take some time. And so the on the court stuff, okay, he wins a championship. That's pretty tangible. You see the trophy in his freaking hands. With this other stuff, I mean, I still have the image of him at the rally in Ohio with him and Hillary Clinton, and Hillary lost the election. So I think that there's this stuff that he's probably a little bit more sensitive about, because I think he feels, and I would say fairly, that he deserves more credit and respect for the stuff that he's done off the court, and he's not getting it. He gets, except for the people who put Michael Jordan ahead of him, which even as big of an ego as LeBron has, and you have to be that great of a basketball player, I'm sure even he can recognize that there's a strong argument to be made that Michael Jordan's the greatest basketball player of all time.
Sure.
So I'm sure part of him gets that, why people don't want to elevate him to that point. But I think from this other stuff and how much money you mentioned that he spends, and his messaging in the community, I think that part of him is probably frustrated and sensitive as to why he's not getting more credit or respect for that.
Well, I think it comes to this, Jet. If you like LeBron James, you're amazed at what he does. If you don't like him, you just say, well, he makes a lot of money, he can afford it. Or you go as far as what Fox News has done and said, well, he really didn't put that money up. Like, it's really not his money. Like, okay, whose money is it? He's earned, all of this money. He doesn't have to share it like he has. Someone's paying for the $100 million worth of scholarships to the University of Akron over the next 10 years. I mean, those are facts. Someone paid for the I Promise school. Now, I think they worked it in with some of the budgets within Akron, but if you're able to work with that and expand that, that's still a great thing. And the early reports are the kids are doing great at that school. And just as importantly, the parents of those kids are doing really well at the school, because the education there isn't just about the kids. It's also about helping the parents, trying to better the parents to further their education a bit and get better jobs. That's someone who's really clearly thinking beyond just, I built a school, isn't it beautiful? Come look at it. And so I think that's the part where he says, why can't I get more credit for this? And again, I just think it goes back to if you like the guy like I do, you're amazed at this stuff. And if you don't, you say, well, it seems like it's not sincere. It's sincere. I mean, anybody that's committed that type of money isn't just doing this for the fun of it.
Yeah,
unless he's got us all fooled.
I definitely think it's sincere. I mean,
Right.
There's always, when you're talking about guys who make this much money and who are this famous, there's always some level of skepticism and some level of, doing it for it's mostly genuine and sincere. I don't disagree with that, but I think there's always going to be some level of skepticism when you're that famous because listen, he has an ego. You can't deny it. And anybody who's at that level of professional athlete. So believe me, part of him taking the pictures in front of the school and like feeling good about it, it might be 99% because it's the right thing to do, but there is a percentage that's to feed his ego. And if anybody who denies that is crazy. It's not thinking properly. That's just human nature. I'm not criticizing for it. I'm just saying it's a fact. That's just how it is. But I think also, and because I want to read this Ibrahimović quote from 2018, LeBron was pointing to the hypocrisy of it. And that's where I think the story sort of gets even more interesting, is that Ibrahimović in 2018 was talking about exactly what you said, having a Bosnian last name, living and being Swedish, living in Sweden. This is what he had to say. This is about racism. It's about racism. I don't say there is racism, but I say there is undercover racism. This exists. I'm 100% sure because I'm not an Anderson or a Svensson. If I would be that, trust me, they would defend me even if I would rob a bank. They defend me, I'm telling you. So that was a snippet from what he was talking about in terms of how he's treated differently with a different last name being Swedish. Anderson, Svensson, much more common Swedish names than Ibrahimović, as you mentioned, Bosnian last name. So while it's not it's less, maybe it's less clear to us living in the United States because you look at, he's white. He's living with other white people in Sweden than black people, white people living in, the same country. There's not a lot of black people living in Sweden. That's just the demographics of it.
There's not a lot of people living in Sweden, period. I think about 12 million.
So I think it's hard to connect what he's saying to something that we experience here in the United States. That being said, it's the same side of a different coin, I guess, if that's the best way to put it, Sap, in that he was arguing that there's racism and inequality based off of a person's ethnicity. Even though they might look the same, their last names are different. LeBron, again, it's not even an argument, it's stating a fact. I don't want to make it seem like it's debatable. It's clearly racism. But LeBron's saying, well, this guy's saying the exact same thing I was. I'm just talking about my community that I have experience with.
Right.
And so I think that LeBron I don't think that he knew this off the top of his head. I'm sure one of his advisors told him this about Ibrahimović because I didn't know it. And most people, why would he be following what Zlatan Ibrahimović said in 2018? And probably an interview he did in Swedish. So I think LeBron, but when he heard that, I'm sure he was like, what the fuck? This guy's doing the exact same thing.
Well, what you do is you do oppo research, right? This is what politicians do. Oppo research, let's dig up some dirt or whatever on Ibrahimović, and that's what they were able to do. But there is a difference of a person with a Bosnian last name who's Swedish than a black man, right? I mean, there's a difference, right? There's a different, I'm not using this word properly, tone or level of racism. Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, no one would know walking down the street that he has a Bosnian last name unless he's wearing a name tag.
Right. And he's a soccer star. But again, I do want to warn people, racism in Europe is much worse than it is here. It is a disaster there. So, yeah, there's going to be that racism against Ibrahimović with that Bosnian last name in Sweden. But it doesn't rise to the level of what a black man faces in this country.
Right, but Seth, the question is, why did he feel comfortable bringing that up and then criticizing LeBron?
Right, well, because I don't think he's a stable guy. I mean, just go on Wikipedia.
Now you're slandering his mental health, Seth.
Well, no, because just go check out how many confrontations the guy's had with teammates, opponents. I mean, he's a loose cannon. I don't know who we could compare him to among the top athletes in this country. I mean, I'm not going to say Aaron Hernandez hasn't killed anyone, but but the guy is volatile to say the least. So maybe he was thinking one way in 2018 and 2 years later, he comes out and thinks a different way. No one's shooting him in Sweden because he has a Bosnian last name. I don't think. There are black men in this country that are being killed by police because they're black. That's a different story altogether.
So I look at it and say, and trying to think to myself, well, why did he go out of his way to target LeBron James in terms of this I don't do politics stuff? Is it because LeBron James is the biggest name in sports?
Bingo.
Is it because he wishes he was more famous than LeBron James? Like, what's the motivation here? Is it a racial motivation, Sap, or is it a jealousy motivation?
It's more jealousy. Look, what better way to get your name out there than to attack LeBron James? Laura Ingraham did it, and maybe ratings went up for her show on Fox. Let me attack the most famous athlete, certainly in America, maybe in the world, right? I mean, he's at the same level as
him and Messi are probably the two most famous athletes in the world.
And Cristiano Ronaldo. Those are the three that I think of. Tiger Woods has fallen behind those guys. And
yeah, but we had this argument years ago in the Herald, Sap, and I think because basketball is so popular in China, and I don't think they give two craps about soccer in China, he's the most famous athlete on the planet.
And sneaker sales too, right? I mean, like, you don't buy cleats because Ronaldo wears them. You buy sneakers.
Well, you can't wear them everywhere. So.
You can't wear them unless you want to just start walking around with cleats. I mean, the basketball sneaker market is humongous. And I mean, again, Michael Jordan makes $165 million a year from the Air Jordan brand from Nike, and he hasn't played a basketball game since 2003. That is an amazing story, right? When you just think about that the checks continue to come in. Yeah. So LeBron,
and it remains the most popular shoe, and nothing is close.
My grandniece is turning 5. Every Christmas, she gets some sort of Air Jordans for Christmas from her uncle.
Yeah, because it's also a unisex. It's a shoe, right?
Yeah. So
men and women love it.
She's not even 5. She probably doesn't know who Michael Jordan is. She'll know who Michael Jordan is though when she is 7 or 8. And
she knows the logo though.
She knows the logo. Brand. It is the greatest logo in the history of sports, in my opinion. Not quite as good as the NBA logo, but
Do you want to jump right into that then, Sap?
You like that, huh? You like that?
I do. I really like that. I thought that you wanted to complain a little bit more about Ibrahimović.
No,
but
he's fine. He's my eye doctor's cousin or something. I don't know. And I like her. She did a good job with me.
Okay. Well, credit to her. Just get, people, you're trying to get people funneled into her business. Maybe you get a little bit of side action from that.
Yeah. Well, I paid a lot for these glasses, so maybe I get a reduction.
Well, it's interesting you bring up the NBA logo, Sap. I don't know how you even thought to do that, but it leads us very, very well into
I'm a trained professional, Jen. I'm a trained professional.
Our second topic today. This is one I really, really am anxious to talk about because it seems simple, but it's actually a lot more complex the more you get into it. That's the NBA logo. Why are we talking about the NBA logo? Because the guy who can't stay out of the news headlines for more than a couple of weeks, my least favorite basketball player on the planet, Kyrie Irving, decided to open up his big mouth again and say something that he feels like is really intelligent, but then the more you think of it, probably wasn't that smart to say. I'm going to explain why in a second. Kyrie Irving on his Instagram, I want to say. Yes, Instagram. Put a picture of Kobe Bryant on the NBA logo on top of it, superimposed on top of it, saying, "This has got to happen," in referring to a new logo for the league. Black Kings built the league. Vanessa Bryant, Kobe Bryant's widow, shared her post on her Instagram with saying, "Love this" at Kyrie Irving. Then a whole lot of players started saying, "Yes, got to happen. Let's do it. Let's do it." Kobe obviously is, we've talked about this before on the show, revered amongst this generation of players, more so than any player amongst this generation. All time, it's Michael Jordan, but this group of players is in the NBA right now. Kobe is there. Michael Jordan, he's their basketball icon. We know Kyrie Irving had a close relationship with Kobe Bryant, as did a lot of players in the NBA before he passed, obviously. Sap, the NBA logo for a long time has been one of the iconic logos in sports, instantly recognizable. It is of Jerry West, though the league has never formally admitted that. Jerry West, not a huge fan of it, but also has never taken a dime for what is pretty obviously his likeness on it. Let me ask you this first. Does the NBA need to change their logo to a black player? And should that player be Kobe Bryant?
What I would do, and I have a column up on Full Press Coverage about this story. And first of all, I think Kyrie was trolling LeBron James, right? Because he wants the logo changed, but it's going to be Kobe, not LeBron, who's clearly the greater player than Kobe. And I get that Kobe died a year ago and LeBron is still playing. So there's a weird, discussion about that. Jerry West has never been comfortable about being the logo, the silhouette of Jerry West being the logo. As you said, he's never taken a dime. This has been since 1969. I think eventually they should change the logo to a black player. Yes, because the league is 80% black. But I would wait till Jerry West passes on. And Jerry West is 82. He looks 15 years younger. Leave well enough alone. In 100 years, if Jerry West passes on, then you can have the discussion about changing the logo. And no, it shouldn't be Kobe Bryant. When Jerry West became the logo, he probably shouldn't have been the logo either. It should have been Bill Russell, who at that point was the greatest player in the history of the sport. At the time that Jerry West became the logo, I would say that Jerry West was the fifth greatest player in the history of the NBA. Right?
Does the logo have to represent the greatest player in the history of the league?
I just want to go into this, though. I want to go into this. So I would say that Russell, Chamberlain, Oscar Robertson, Elgin Baylor, and Jerry West are the five greatest players in the history of the sport as of 1969. As of now, I have Jerry West as like the 12th greatest player in the history of the sport. That's still pretty incredible considering it's been 50 years since he last played. If we're going to change the logo and we're going to put a black player on, which I think we should, Kobe Bryant would be like my seventh choice behind Bill Russell. But unfortunately, I would not put Bill Russell on as the logo because it kind of has that feel of Supreme Court justice where you want to replace the outgoing or the deceased justice with someone younger so you can just leave them in place for a while. Bill Russell's 5 years older than Jerry West. So I would go, I think the choice is clear. It's Michael Jordan. I don't even think there's a discussion. If the logo is going to change, it should be Michael Jordan. He's had more impact on the sport than anyone. Now, if you can work it out with Nike that used the Air Jordan logo in some way with it, or maybe his iconic game-winning shot over Byron
I can
Russell
tell you this,
in the 98 finals, it should.
He's
I don't even think
not
it's
going to not take a dime. He would want to be compensated.
Yeah, which is kind of gross.
Fairly.
Well,
no,
in a sense.
It's his likeness.
It is his likeness, but how much money do you need and how much money have you made off the NBA brand? But I know times have changed. So, yeah, it should be Michael Jordan. Though. Taking that part out of it, I don't even think there's discussion. In fact, I have a poll running, if Jerry West gets replaced as the logo, who should it be? And the four names I came up with were, in my opinion, the three greatest players in the history of the sport, Jordan, LeBron, and Kareem. And I'm sorry, Russell. And then I put Kobe in there because that was the narrative pushed forward by Kyrie Irving. Now, Russell, again, he's too old. LeBron's still playing. And look, I would get attacked if I said LeBron should be the logo. It should be Michael Jordan because he's meant more to that sport than anyone. And I don't even think it's close yet. We had this discussion a couple of weeks ago. Like, no one's had the impact on the NBA like Michael Jordan. You could take like the next three guys and add them all up. They haven't had as much impact as Michael Jordan. In my column, I talk about Michael Jordan, Babe Ruth, Wayne Gretzky, Tiger Woods are like the four athletes that had more impact on their sport than any other. NFL doesn't have a player quite at that level because the brand is the sport in the NFL.
MLB is Harmon Killebrew?
They've talked about it being Harmon Killebrew, but it also looks like he's hitting left-handed. Killebrew was right-handed. It just looks like a generic white guy. Now, if they're going to change that logo, should we go with a Dominican player? I don't know. Like, it gets complicated.
Well, I'm saying,
Sam, Willie Mays?
At the end of the day, the logo is a branding tool, correct?
Right, yeah.
So why does it have to be a specific player? Can't it just be a generic? It should look good, right? The NBA logo as it is right now, it's a sharp logo.
It looks good.
It's instantly recognizable.
Yep.
If you were to poll most basketball fans, I think they would have no idea that it's Jerry West.
Really? Because he's always referred to as the logo.
I'm saying casual fans. I don't think they
casual
would.
fans. But this discussion really should be, I'm not trying to be exclusive here, is more for us. Really.
I'm saying that I just don't necessarily feel like it has to be a player. If it's for branding purposes, you just want it to look as good as possible.
Yeah, because the NFL doesn't have a player on its logo.
Shield.
The shield. Major League Baseball
that sort of speaks to how the different leagues treat their players.
Well, that's the thing, though. That's what I mean. There's never been an NFL player as great as Tom Brady's been, and Jim Brown, and list all the great players.
They'll never put a player as their logo. Never.
No, because the NFL was very popular before Tom Brady played, and when he retires in 10 years or whatever, it'll remain popular.
But that's how they separate themselves too, is that the league is bigger than any one player.
They're not beholden to one player. Look, when Jordan retired in 93 for the first time, ratings plummeted. He came back, they went back up. He retired for good in 2003. The league panicked. We need someone to replace Jordan. Was it Kobe? Was it LeBron? Two all-time great players. As great as those guys are, they've not had the impact that Michael Jordan had. So if we're going to change it, it would be Michael Jordan. I don't think it's necessary to change it, but if that is Jerry West, and that's what most insiders believe it is, in fact, he says it is, then maybe it's time to change it to the silhouette of a black player in a league that's 80% black.
I do agree with you that if the league or people feel it needs to be changed, and I don't, because Jerry West is one of the least problematic players from any era that you could think of. He's really doesn't done anything that's particularly bad in his life and seems, if anything, overly complimentary of today's players too. He's not like one of those curmudgeons, and has had a successful career in the front office for 40 years now.
Over that, he's you can make a case he's been a better executive than player. Which is
so
scary.
one of the great figures in the history of the NBA, bar none,
without question.
But if you do feel you need to put a black guy on there, because the league, like you said, is 80% black, and despite me thinking Kyrie is a dope most of the times, he is right that the league was built on the backs of black players, and it remains that way. That's a fact. Can't argue that. There's been great white players. Most of the great players in the history of the league have been black. That's just the way it breaks down. I hate to break it to you. Larry Bird fans. He's tremendous. One of the great players ever. There's for every Larry Bird, great Larry Bird player, there's been, plenty of black players too.
Literally 9 black players. My top 10 has one white player, and that's Larry Bird. The other players are black.
So I don't disagree with that point. I don't find the need to change it because I just don't feel like there's anything problematic with it. That being said, I do agree. If you were to change it, it should be a black player if you want to keep the tradition of having an X player on it. I disagree with you, though, Sap. I would have it be Bill Russell, and I'm going to tell you why right now.
Okay.
I think that if you're going to put a black player on it, or any player, it should represent what the ultimate goal of being an NBA player is, which is success on and off the court. And nobody, in my mind, has had more success and impact on and off the court in terms of making changes than Bill Russell. No one has or will reach his number of total championships. It's not going to happen. 11. It's just too daunting of a task for anybody to accomplish.
Unless it's Tom Brady in the NFL.
Yeah, he just might do it. But it's too daunting. So, I mean, that's the ultimate level of team success and on-court success you can have, is the success Bill Russell had in the NBA. MVPs, the most championships, you name it. And then off the court, he went above and beyond, willing to sacrifice his on-the-court career to step up for what he believed in. So I look at that level of excellence and leadership as the ultimate goal for any player to try to attain. And so I look at that as, if you want a real symbol of what it should mean to be an NBA player and what the league stands for and likes to fancy itself standing for, then I think Bill Russell is the best example of that.
In my column, I said my heart wants Bill Russell to be the logo.
And I get what you're saying, that you'd want a more modern player. And Jordan obviously expanded the game like nobody else and like nobody ever will again, because, I mean, he expanded it to every continent, including Antarctica.
You bring up a good point. He would want money for that. He would.
He'd want money for it. Yeah.
And I bet LeBron probably would too. Look.
Kobe's family probably would too.
Kobe would want money. Kobe's family would want money. I don't think Russell would. Russell would literally tear up because he's 87 years old too. So I mean,
Yeah,
when an
if he
older
got
gentleman
money, and if he did, he'd donate it anyways. He doesn't.
right. No, he's just and you make a great point because when he made those sacrifices, he lost a lot. The players today, it's kind of chic, it's cool, it's dope. I'm using some terms that Cam Newton used to describe Bill Belichick. But what Kaepernick did may have cost him his career, but he's made a ton of money, right? Since not playing football anymore.
Anything.
It hasn't cost LeBron anything. People, that our side of the aisle loves what he does. With Bill Russell,
but it hasn't cost him a penny. It hasn't cost LeBron James a single
not
penny.
A penny. If anything, it's made him more money. So, but Bill Russell, I mean, when he and Jim Brown and Tommy Smith and John Carlos and then Lou Alcindor was in college.
Yep.
That was not popular what they do. Muhammad Ali, lost 3.5 years of his career. So those gentlemen, that was ballsy what they did back in the 60s. What the guys are doing now, I give them a ton of credit because they could lose some.
The risk isn't the same.
The risk isn't the same. You would lose endorsements now if you were 180-degree difference, right? If maybe you were a really strong conservative and, whatever the case may be, and you came up with some crazy stuff, kind of like Kurt Schilling, you're probably going to lose on that end. So
John
Rocker, guys like that, yeah. So what Bill Russell,
they're always baseball players.
Mostly baseball players from the South. So I would love to see Bill Russell because I am appalled that the only monument we have in the city of Boston of Bill Russell is a statue somewhere near Government Center, near the Wax Museum, that you really would have to look to find. Like, you can't put that in front of TD Garden. You got a statue of Bobby Orr, who all-time great player, but I mean, and he contributed to the growth of his sport. But Bill Russell to me is at another level than any athlete I can even think of.
Yeah, I agree. So I changed your mind. I've won this argument.
No. My point on that is what Jordan meant to the league. The league is what it is today, financially and growth-wise, because of Jordan. It is. And again, but you make a great point. He would be looking for money for that. That's just the way he operates. And I'm sure LeBron would too. And I'm sure, Kobe's family would as well. The Kobe part of it, I don't quite understand.
Let's get into that, Seth.
It's very fresh. It's a year ago, but it almost has the same feel. And I don't want to come across as sounding crass, but it almost comes across as, James Dean died at 24 in a horrific car accident. And the narrative over the years has become, James Dean would have been a better actor than Marlon Brando.
Well, I was named after him, so I agree.
Okay, you agree with that. So James Dean was going to be better than Marlon Brando or Montgomery Clift, who were the two best actors of that era, or at least the two greatest method actors of that era. That's not the case. I mean, James Dean would have been a very good actor. He was a very good actor, but he wasn't Marlon Brando. So now the legend of Kobe is going to continue to grow now in depth, which it happens. This happens in society, players that get hurt and have short careers, where there's Bobby Orr or Gale Sayers. They're the greatest ever, because if you just extrapolate their numbers and double it, well, you can't just do that. So the Kobe pushback, as far as being the potential logo, I don't get it. It should be Jordan, but Russell also is a very viable candidate. Kobe, he's the most popular player among this generation. I think maybe some of the older guys, it was Iverson that they loved. And it's kind of crazy. And I always try to figure this out. Like, no one likes LeBron. No. Like the modern players, other than maybe the Greek Freak and Luka, and they're both foreign players. The American
Richard
players,
Jefferson, Channing Frye, they like him a lot.
Well, they're the same age as him, if not older. And they won a championship because of him. They should like him. But you know what I'm saying? Like Kobe, whether it's Tatum or Kyrie Irving, or all love Kobe.
All these guys love him. Yep.
They love him. And is it style? I don't want to hear about the Mamba mentality. You do realize Kobe hit one game-winning shot in his entire career in the playoffs. LeBron has 5. So this whole narrative that Kobe was a cold-blooded killer and was so big in clutch situations is false. And also, he quit on his team several times. You did see Game 6 of the 2008 finals, right? At TD Garden, he just mailed it in at that point.
Is that similar to Game 7 of the 8 Eastern Conference Finals with LeBron, or semifinals?
When LeBron had 42?
He quit.
Yeah, he quit. He quit before he's. I always hear the narrative that he quit in Game 6 of the 2010 Finals, and I kept looking it up. I go, he had 29 points, 17 rebounds, and like 8 assists and 4 steals. I'm like, oh, guys should quit all the time of that. But and again,
he did actually quit on his team. He left Cleveland. I mean, so if you want to talk about
that, he took his shirt off and then he came
did
back. Yep.
Quit.
He loves taking his shirt off. If I had that physique, I probably would too.
This is what I want to say though, Sepp, about the Kobe thing. Before, sorry to cut you off for a second.
Why is he the most popular player among? Is it because he's the Mamba mentality? I think somewhat people were frightened of him. Whereas
his
LeBron,
and his game was cooler. We talked about this before. His game was more replicable than LeBron's James game.
Yeah, you can't replicate what LeBron does. I mean, Luka, they're trying to make it out that way, but Luka doesn't have that athleticism. If you took Luka and Giannis and put them together in one player, that's LeBron, right? The athleticism.
People like watching like Kobe soaring in the air to dunk was like watching like a fighter jet. LeBron, it's like seeing a tank on wings.
Right? Yeah. There's it is. It's just a big.
He's not graceful. LeBron, he's powerful.
No, he's powerful. It's more Zion Williamson.
And people are attracted to like the grace part of it. Is like that's what people really love. Like Michael Jordan is like watching like dancing. It was incredible. Like LeBron, like I'm saying, it's like watching watching a monster truck and you put some wings on it. It's just like
it's like a stealth bomber.
One of those aircraft carriers or something like that. But
he's a big man.
The point that you haven't brought up yet about Kobe, and this is why I'm saying it was dumb of Kyrie to bring this up, is that this brings to light again the problematic off the court stuff with Kobe. The rape allegations, the at bare minimum proven fact unconsensual sex with a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And no one has been talking about that other than, like a couple of celebrities like Rose McGowan, who always decides to say something and upset people on Twitter. No one had really said anything negative about Kobe or talked about Kobe in any sort of bad light since he died. This was
even before that, Jet.
This was the biggest story in the NBA for a year.
Sure.
Kobe
in
Bryant,
the finals,
the rape
right?
allegations. Yeah. He was flying back and forth from court in Colorado he until the end of his career was getting booed at every single Nuggets game. Loudly, aggressively. I mean, he got booed at a lot of places, but most places were cheering him his final season, not in Denver.
And he loved getting booed. He was one guy that loved he loved being booed. That's the one thing about Kobe that's different than LeBron.
So Kobe, again, this is stuff people were glorifying Kobe. If you're going to have somebody be on the logo, they cannot have anything like that. It can't. So Kyrie Irving inadvertently, because I don't think he did this on purpose. I don't think he's smart enough to do this sort of stuff on purpose. Opened up this can of worms where now there's a bunch of articles being written about, well, it's kind of unsavory to put Kobe on the, on this mantle now. It's kind of unsavory. You can't really have him be the logo because he had unconsensual sex with a woman. He cheated on his wife. He potentially raped a woman. I mean, obviously, court of law, he was proven innocent or there was a settlement. I don't even remember how it ended up. But she didn't show up to court. There was probably some sort of payout. Whatever happened. It wasn't a good look. It's certainly not the family values that the NBA and all these sports league want to put forward. And if Kobe Bryant became the logo, it would unfortunately, because I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but it would be a stain on the logo and it would be a stain on the league because of the off the court stuff. So if you're going to have somebody
you're not going to get that with Russell, obviously. I mean,
if you're going to have somebody represent one person, one figure represent the entire league, past, present, and future, they better be squeaky clean, Sap. Squeaky clean. And he's not. It sucks to say this, and it has to bring this stuff up about a guy who died so tragically so recently. And I don't want to say this stuff and bring it up anymore, but dumb Kyrie has forced this conversation to happen. Again, inadvertently. I don't think he did it on purpose. I just don't think he thought it through. And people who are saying he should be the logo aren't thinking it through. You can't have a guy who had this serious of an allegation against him be the guy who represents past, present, and future of your league. You just can't have it. From a pure marketing perspective, it's a nightmare. It's never going to happen. The league knows this. The players, I'm sure, somewhere in the back of their mind knows this. It's just it doesn't make sense. He's not nearly. It's the same reason why the NFL would never ever put Jim Brown as their logo.
No, No, or
And
O.J.
he's and he's
Simpson,
a
obviously.
and he's a, or O.J. Simpson. And he's a greater
Right.
player in football history than Kobe
Oh, of
Bryant is in
course.
basketball history.
Oh,
But
absolutely.
way too many unsavory things off the field for Jim
Yep.
Brown to ever be the logo in the NFL.
And
Kobe
you wouldn't
Bryant.
get that. You wouldn't get that with Jordan. I mean, there's rumors and whatever, but Jordan was
The
more of a
worst thing
guy
is
just
gambling with
gambling,
Jordan,
which
really.
isn't good. But now
Not
it's
good, but
now it's encouraged by the league, right?
yeah.
The league now has embraced gambling, which is kind of odd with Major League Baseball.
This
They
is
embrace
bad,
gambling.
Sep, in terms of like female
Yeah.
fans make up
Sure.
a large portion of the NBA
Yep.
audience. And
Yeah,
it would
you don't
be
want to put Ray Rice
so
as
alienating to them. I would, if
No, I
I was a
agree.
woman, I would be unhappy with it. And I know, and now you have people like poor Vanessa Bryant has to like answer these questions and talk
Yeah.
about it. And she obviously she's going to defend her husband as she should. But the fact of the matter is, if you look at the details of the case, it was a really ugly allegation. And whether
Yep.
it was rape or not, something very unsavory happened. The woman clearly, Kobe Bryant's own admission, said it wasn't consensual sex in her mind. He said in his mind it was, in her mind
Right.
it wasn't. And that's by his own admission. So it's
Yep.
just, this is the sort of stuff that this conversation, unfortunately, has forced us into talking about. And to me,
Yep.
it just points out how ill thought out it was by Kyrie and how it's just never going to happen because of that unsavory stuff.
Kyrie's kind of like Kramer from Seinfeld, right? You know, like he just sometimes says things and you go, why did he just say that? You know, like
No one was going to talk about this stuff again.
No.
If it didn't come up, the NBA has already come up with a very apt tribute for Kobe Bryant at the All-Star Game MVP award.
Yeah,
they named it after him, and that's first of all, that is Kobe Bryant's career in a microcosm. How amazingly efficient or great he was as an individual player, and like his the 81 points and stuff. Perfect All-Star Game MVP named after him. That makes total sense to me. But the logo, you can't do it, Zap. You just it's problematic.
And the funny thing is, in the poll that I'm running with the four players, it's been Russell and Jordan at the forefront of the poll, and I'm surprised. Actually, I think it right now. If you go on John Sapp 25, there's the poll. You know, if Jerry West gets replaced as the logo, who should it be? Should it be LeBron, Kobe, Russell, or Jordan? And I believe at this point, Russell's actually leading, which kind of warms my heart because now I get so turned off when you get on Twitter and look, Twitter's not the place to really discuss these things or have some sort of cognizant conversations, but would they just belittle Bill Russell? Oh, he could never play today. I don't think people realize what a great athlete Bill Russell was. Yeah, he would have figured out what to do.
there are so few teams. Well, then the concentration of talent was a lot better, right?
Right,
because it wasn't spread out.
Was Jordan's league that great when he was dominating it? No, because you didn't have the European players or the South American players in there yet. You also were coming off of adding 6 teams to the league. The NBA was really watered down in the 90s. The 80s, not so much. The 90s, very watered down. So, Jordan's 6 titles, are they illegitimate? No, you win with who you face.
No
Same
title's
thing with Bill Russell. No, you win the title. Yeah, I mean, now people are trolling LeBron saying, "Oh, last year was in a bubble, yada yada." Well, they had the best record in the West.
You win it. Period.
They never had
unless you cheated. You win it.
Which goes back to the Patriots more than any other team.
No, the Astros, not the Patriots.
Astros, well, Patriots too. But I think your case for Bill Russell is a very good one. I said in my column, in my heart, I want Bill Russell. Because Bill Russell is probably the one athlete I'd like to meet and get the chance to interview because there's just so much more there. And the thing I love about Russell, he goes, "I'm not a basketball player. I'm a man." That he played basketball and he did it better than anyone. But that him as a man is what he was more concerned with and more willing to talk about. He's one person I would just like to meet. And again, I'm so turned off that the city of Boston, that's the statue we have of Bill Russell kind of hidden in Government Center near the Wax Museum. It's like, the first time I ever saw it, I go, this is ridiculous. It's terrible. It's like going to some of the monuments in Washington. I went to see the FDR monument in Washington and half of it was closed because they were doing construction work on it. I'm like, can't you fix this stuff quickly or do it better?
And by the time David Ortiz has passed away, the whole city will have been named after him.
Man,
he's got like
bridges,
3 bridges,
streets,
roads.
Yeah.
Probably a building at some point. If they ever make a new Fenway Park, they'll just call it Ortiz Park.
We got a tunnel named after Ted Williams. I mean, Bill Russell has a statue that's I'm just not impressed with it.
It's more the location of the statue that's
the
issue,
statue's
right?
not even, and I'm not a big statue guy. I mean, it's kind of weird since I'm Roman. There's all sorts of statues in Rome, but I'm not
you
a real
invented
big
the
statue
statue.
guy. I have many of my relatives are statues. But the location, it's like, can't you put it near TD Garden or put it in Faneuil Hall?
I wonder what the issue is with the Garden, because it's obviously not owned by the Celtics, it's owned by the Bruins. If he had an issue with putting a Celtics statue outside of it, Jeremy Jacobs.
Yeah, he probably didn't get enough money for it.
I don't know, but I agree with you. The placement isn't good enough. The statue should be 10 times the size.
Have you ever seen it?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the statue? It's next to the wax museum. It's like,
it looks like him. The statue artist did a nice job.
She did, and she's from Somerville, my hometown.
Oh.
But the statue's fine. It's just the location is just like, what?
So I'm sure also, there's probably, is there a Kobe statue yet? If there's not, there will be one outside the Staples Center.
I'm sure there will be, yeah.
But not going to be the logo. Not going to happen.
There's a Nick Foles statue outside.
There unfortunately is. That is the least deserving statue of all time.
That's ridiculous. No wonder Carson Wentz couldn't wait to get the
I've
hell
also
out of
never
there.
seen a statue built that quickly in my life. Usually these things take a little while. They had that thing ready to go in 2 weeks. It's like
paper
they made
mache.
it out of paper mache.
Yeah. It was
chocolate.
like a pinata, yeah, of Nick Foles.
Completely hollow.
That was great.
That one got built quickly. So I appreciate the discussion for changing the logo. I don't think it's necessary. If you were to do it, Bill Russell would be my clear choice. Kobe Bryant, again, you just can't. You can't.
No, I agree with that.
I don't want to talk about this. Kyrie, you forced me to do something I don't want to do. That seems to be something. I do feel personally attacked by Kyrie Irving on a regular basis. But it is an interesting discussion. It's just it's unrealistic. If they think if players are thinking that's going to be Kobe Bryant, they're not thinking clearly about it.
No, I would go with Jordan, but I would be completely pleased with Bill Russell. In fact, I'd be more pleased with Russell but again, the age factor, and then say he passes on, and you're like, okay, now let's change it again. So there's that part of it. And I also, again, conspiracy theory here, that I think maybe Kyrie was just trolling LeBron once again. 1 week he says, "Is that the best free throw shooter you have?"
I can get on board with.
I can
get on board with that.
I think we should change the logo. Let me pick the guy who Sapichetti has as the 9th greatest player ever, and Kobe Bryant, over the guy who Sapichetti has as the best player of all time, LeBron James.
It's all about always comes back to you.
Well, why am I talking the third person as well, which I don't understand.
Who do you think Zlatan Ibrahimović would vote for as the logo?
Probably Larry Bird.
I was going to say Jonas Jerebko. Fellow Swede.
Yeah, that could be true. Yeah,
he is the Swedish Michael Jordan.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he's the only guy I remember coming from Sweden. Yeah,
as far as I know, he's the only Swedish player to ever play in the NBA.
Well,
there's a couple
of
from
tennis
Switzerland,
players.
But
yeah, a lot of tennis players from Sweden.
But yeah, so Jerebko is who Ibrahimović posted his vote for. He had LeBron dead last of every NBA play.
Yeah, everybody else tied for a spot above LeBron.
Well, Sap, I enjoy. I feel like we could be doing this show in particular for like 4 hours, because there's just.
Let's not go there. I don't think anyone wants to listen to us.
I'm hungry.
Hours.
I'm hungry.
I am too. I've already had supper, but I need a second supper.
Okay. Yes, that's very, very Italian of you.
Very healthy of me. What are you making for supper?
Some chicken that I've marinated in like some generic Wegmans marinade. Nothing too special.
Can I give you a good marinade? Can I give you a good marinade for chicken or steak tips? 1/3 Coca-Cola.
You've told me this. It sounds disgusting.
It's delicious.
Sorry, continue so people can hear it. It's gross sounding.
1/3 ketchup, 1/3 Coca-Cola, 1/3 Italian dressing. Mix it all together. Use the blender, whatever. It's tremendous because you get the flavor from the ketchup. You also get the little sweetness from the Coca-Cola and the texture of the Italian dressing. But you got to let things marinate for, overnight at least. It's great for steak tips, chicken breast, whatever. Again, 1/3 ketchup, 1/3 Coca-Cola, and 1/3 Italian dressing.
In a bag, just like 1/3 equally?
Yeah, or just a bowl. Yeah, bowl, and then just go ahead.
And now, did this recipe come from ancient Rome as well?
No, that doesn't. No, that wouldn't be Rome. We put other stuff in there. There wouldn't be any ketchup. We're not big on ketchup in Rome. Probably be actual, tomatoes, not just ketchup. But no, there's a lot of restaurants in the area, bars that do a lot of marinated steak tips. That's their secret sauce. So I'm just sharing their secrets.
I'll try it, and I will give it a negative review.
I'm sure you will.
Before I've made up my mind.
Yeah,
So.
we'll be like Portnoy with the pizza reviews. We'll have our own, steak tip
marinade reviews.
Why not?
I could get down with that. So
Yeah,
that'll be our next podcast.
Combinations. There's not a lot of combinations.
You know what, Sep? There's not a lot of people doing podcasts on marinade. So
no, I think we have a niche somewhere.
There we go. Well, this has been the Pick and Roll NBA podcast with Jet and Sap. In case you weren't clear, we are presented by Full Press Coverage. You can find our podcast on their website, fullpresscoverage.com. We are also on Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube. We tweet out the link. You can find us. If you're interested, we're not hard to find. We're not hiding. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We will be back later in the week with another episode and plenty more NBA stuff to talk about as the All-Star break is almost upon us. We'll get into the All-Stars, where teams look at the it's not really the midpoint in the season, but what the NBA is designating as the midpoint in the season, and give you our prognostications for the rest of the year. Again, we are the Pick and Roll NBA podcast. I'm Jet Stryer. That's John Sapichetti. We are presented by our friends at Full Press Coverage. See you, everybody.